All right, I'm Pastor Matthew Verhoeven of the Valley Alliance, and this is 1 Kings chapters 1 and 2 in 3 minutes. We can imagine this whole story as a play with a few acts. King David, the great king, is now old and cold. His servants decide he needs a hot girl to warm him up, so Abishai is provided, but it doesn't seem to help, and he still remains listless. 1 Kings 1:5, Adonijah is exalted himself, saying, I will be king. Now everyone can see David is dying, and they're jockeying for power. Now, David was promised by God that his son would reign forever, but his sons, well, Amnon committed incest and then was the victim of fratricide. Chileab is dead. Absalom committed said fratricide and organized an armed coup against his father, slept with his father's concubines, and now son 4 exalts himself. Bathsheba is back on the scene, the victim of David's worst crime. Now, Nathan the prophet goes to her and is like, Bathsheba, we need to go to David right now or else we're going to die. Bathsheba says to David, my Lord, you swore to your servant by the Lord your God, saying, Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne. And now behold, Adonijah is king, although you, my Lord the king, do not know it. Now, Abishai didn't awaken David, but Bathsheba does. Perhaps in honoring his promise to her about Solomon reigning, something of his old sin against her is done away. He kind of wakes up here and he makes all the arrangements, and before long, then they blew the trumpet and all the people said, long live King Solomon. So Adonijah is partying up outside the city with all his cronies. But then the news comes, David has declared Solomon king. All of a sudden, all the people rushing to get on the right side of the history are rushing to get on the new right side of history. Adonijah himself grabs hold of the horns of the altar in an ancient plea for mercy, which Solomon grants for now. So in chapter 2, David gives his final charge to Solomon. He tells him to follow the word of God and his family will be blessed according to God's promise. But then in his final words, he gives commands about Joab, his commander, and Shimei, his old enemy, who he himself had forgiven before. He says, you shall bring his gray head down with blood to Sheol. Then David dies. It's really strange that David, who's well known for forgiving people like Saul and Absalom and Shimei, I think that's what makes David really a man after God's own heart. It's his forgiveness. So why now at the end does he, go out by giving a hit list to his son, which, his son's going to carry out the rest of chapter 2. Now, as a Christian looking at the story, we can see Christ in David's forgiveness in his life. And yet in David's final charge and really Solomon's reign, we see something of Christ's second coming, which will mean peace and prosperity for all who recognize Jesus as king, but judgment for his enemies. Now, Jesus offers forgiveness to all, but that time of forgiveness will run out.